Welcome back to the Bryan Devore Connection. I'm your host, Bryan Devore. Divorce, it's a topic that a lot of people have to deal with in their lives, unfortunately, and you want to have professionals who can really help you navigate the divorce process. There are good ways to have a divorce and there are not such good ways to have a divorce. So here to talk about the 5 ways to have a bad divorce is my friend Shawn Weber with Weber Dispute Resolution. Shawn, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. So I like this idea of kind of coming at this topic from the angle of 5 ways to have a bad divorce because of the topic of divorce.
Yeah, I mean, divorce, it's something that happens all the time. Divorce is kind of an ugly business. I sometimes joke, I may not know how to save a marriage, but I sure know how to ruin one. And, when you're in the divorce industry, you see everything that can possibly go wrong.
Right, exactly.
And I see that, and I think there are some themes that we see in the cases where people are completely miserable versus the cases where people get out of it. Maybe it's not the most awesome experience they've ever had, but it's not so completely horrible and they're able to move on and have peace. The cases where people are miserable, sometimes doing lasting damage to their family and to their children, those cases have some themes that we typically see quite a bit.
Right. So Shawn, as you know, I went through a divorce and I used a mediator before I knew you, and it definitely went smoother than it probably could have. But so 5 tips to have a bad divorce. Pay attention, everybody, because you're going to want to know these 5 important things. The first one: hire the cheapest attorney.
Yeah, I mean, the old axiom that you get what you pay for. It's real. And when you're talking about attorneys, that can be real too. And so when you hire the cheapest attorney you can find, a lot of times what you're doing is hiring somebody that's either inexperienced or new in the industry, maybe is not a specialist in family law. In California, there's actually an extra bar association test that you can take to become a certified family law specialist. And extra study and extra work experience is required before you can be a specialist, and those folks charge more per hour because they've earned it. They have more experience and they're higher quality attorneys for the case that you're looking at.
Right.
Related to that, you also want to be careful about hiring what I call dabblers. You go to their website and it says, we'll do bankruptcy, criminal law, corporate reorganizations, we'll do your will, we'll do personal injury, and at the very end of the list, it'll say divorce.
Right.
Those
Jack
are
of all
folks,
trades, master of none.
Yeah, exactly. Jack of all trades, master of none. You want to be careful about that. I'm not saying all of them are terrible, but most of them are.
Right, right.
At least, they may be great attorneys, but they're not experts in family law. They're not specialists in family law.
Right. And I think you don't necessarily have to find the most expensive, but certainly, the race to the bottom is not the place you want to skimp on, especially when you're talking about your divorce.
Yeah, I think that's true. I haven't found a correlation between the most expensive attorney being the best attorney.
Right.
But I've definitely found a correlation between the cheapest attorney not being terribly skilled.
Right. And so the next one, which is one of my favorite ones, which is the thing you and I kind of talk about, is hire a shark to represent you.
Right.
That's a great way to have a bad divorce.
You want to have a miserable divorce, run out and hire a shark. Go find that billboard on the interstate with the nasty message, with angry-looking attorneys on it. Those folks, they're in there to do battle. You'll see things that say aggressive representation in their marketing. The reason that can be problematic is because aggressive, number one, means dollars. They're going to do procedures at court that may or may not be necessary, and they're going to increase the acrimony. It's an adversarial process at court by nature, but with family law, that never made sense to me to be adversarial. So I always say, hire a dolphin instead. And I always kind of joke that I'm the dolphin lawyer. In fact, that's the logo of our firm, is a dolphin.
I think I still have a squishy doll of
Do you?
a
Yeah,
squishy
I give
dolphin.
people the little squishy stress balls of the dolphin.
Yeah.
But the shark will do things to make the case much more acrimonious, which is not what you want to do when you're trying to figure out how to transition a family.
Right. Well, and also too, they say in a long, drawn-out divorce, the only people who win are the attorneys because you're draining the finances of the family. And I remember someone once saying, do you want to have your kids go to college or your attorney's kids go to college, because the money's it's a pot, and you only have the pot, and drawing it out is certainly not going to help.
Well, and I have when you go into litigation, there was a professor I had in law school who always said, with litigation, you go in a pig, you come out a sausage. And I think there's truth in that, and so there's other types of dispute resolution besides litigation. There's mediation, which I do almost exclusively. There's collaborative practice, where attorneys sign agreements that say they'll never go to court, but they're trying to help the parties resolve their case. Those kind of more positive peacemaking type of processes tend to be more successful for folks if they don't want to have a miserable divorce.
Right. Okay, number 3, the third way to have a miserable divorce, whatever you do, don't get a therapist.
Yeah, please don't get a therapist. If you want to have a miserable divorce, you want to make sure that you're bringing in all of your personal drama, all of your angst and difficulties in into your negotiation. And I've had competent CEOs, really together people, absolutely crack up under the pressure of a divorce. It is a really difficult experience. Anybody that's been through it knows it. And so having a person that you can talk to, a therapist or a counselor, or even just a divorce coach, somebody that can make sure that your thinking is clear, can be really helpful if you want to have a nice divorce. But if you want to have a miserable divorce, don't go to a therapist, because you don't want to make sure that you want to make sure your emotions are clouding all of your judgment.
Right, exactly. And you are navigating how you're going to almost live the rest of your life, financially perhaps. So you have all this legal stuff you're going through that you don't really understand, because you've probably never done it before. And then you have the emotions involved, and that could really affect the decisions you make, which sort of leads into number 4. Make sure you use your children as pawns.
Yeah, I mean, part of having a miserable divorce is making sure you destroy your offspring. And so if you want to have a miserable divorce, use your children as pawns. Let them feel the conflict really as part of their lives. Let them define themselves by how much you hate the other spouse.
Right.
And put them in a tug of war. That makes children feel terrible, and it makes them grow up with emotional struggles of their own, where they're going to have to hire therapists when they're adults as well. Now, if you don't want to have a miserable divorce, then the thing to do is don't put your children in the middle. I mean, one thing we know is that the research is clear that what messes a kid up in a divorce is not necessarily the divorce, but it's the conflict between the parents that the children are exposed to. So anything you can do to reduce the conflict will help your children have a divorce story when they talk about your divorce when it's over, when they're adults, talking to their kids. Their divorce story will be, mom and dad really, they got divorced. I'm not sure why, but one thing I knew is I had 2 parents that loved me. But the miserable divorce, you can make sure that they're in the middle of your dispute. That'd just be terrible for them.
I remember you sharing that with me once before about how do you want your children to tell their divorce story?
Yeah.
And that really resonated with me. Sitting in your children's position years from now, and how they're going to reflect back. What do you want them to say about how you handle the divorce and the conflict with your spouse? It means a lot.
It's very forward-looking.
Right, for sure. All right, number 5, and again, for anyone who maybe tuned into this, halfway through, and you're saying, this guy's crazy, why is he telling me how to have bad divorce? Obviously, it's tongue-in-cheek, but these are things you don't want to do, but I'm glad Shawn's sharing the things to do. The 5th thing you definitely want to do, if you want to have a bad divorce, demand justice.
Yes, I have so many people come in. I just want what's fair. And I always say, fair is like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder. Or it's the F word.
Yeah.
Fair is where you buy a pig, but it's not what happens in a divorce, because your definition of fair might be different than my definition of fair. It's too subjective.
Yeah.
And people have different points of view. So what I usually coach people to do if they don't want to have a miserable divorce is, instead of thinking about fair or justice, think about what's a good business decision right now.
Yeah.
So that I can move on.
Right.
As opposed to, I'm going to make sure I get what's mine or what I deserve.
Right.
And I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive, because we grow up in a society where we're taught that fair is right, and it is a good value. But the problem is it's so subjective that it's really meaningless when you're talking with your spouse about what you're negotiating in your divorce.
All right. And there's so many things that go into that.
Yeah, so focus on what's a good business decision, what's an agreement that you can live with. Notice I didn't say, what's an awesome agreement that you would do cartwheels down the hallway over.
Right.
It's what's an agreement that you can live with so that you can move on with the rest of your life and find peace.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So again, these are 5 excellent ways to have a bad divorce, which you don't want to do. If you want to have a good divorce, you want to call Shawn Weber, Weber Dispute Resolution. All of his information is on the screen, so you can call him, you can check out his website. You want to get a dolphin divorce. Again, speaking from experience, mediation is definitely the way to go. Shawn's an expert. He's been doing it for a very long time, and you can't go wrong working with him. Shawn, thank you so much for educating our audience.
You bet. Thanks for having me.